I am Ben from Magento. Welcome. Thanks a lot for making time for us. Kind of, if you're interested in Magento in general, if you're a merchant, whatever brought you here, it's really cool. We all in the business really like to just gab on about this stuff all the time. So it's fun to have maybe some new faces to that haven't heard all of our jokes before. My job at Magento, by the way, here's my contact information, probably a couple of the best ways to get in touch with me. I'm a prolific Twitterer. They pay me, actually, at Magento by the tweet. That was a joke. Ben at Magento.com, just so you know, I'm not some bloke they pulled in from off the streets. And then in some places, it's interesting how we connect with our worldwide community. In some places, Facebook is a thing for business communications, so there's that as well. Above all, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, if you ever have any questions about Magento or anything kind of even tangentially related, please feel free to abuse that inbox. That is part of my job, is being that interface with the world that wants to use our stuff. So it's great that Magento 2 is finally here, right? Magento 2 has a long history in terms of it was originally discussed around 2010. And what happened was there were some acquisitions. Magento actually was acquired by eBay. And then through a series of adventurous decisions, Magento ended up sort of sifting all the way to the top until very recently, back in November, just prior to releasing Magento 2, we separated from eBay. Right? So the nice thing is we can always give eBay a nice round of applause for helping us get Magento 2 out of the door. It's been in development for a good little while. And the reason that we had to have a Magento 2, you can see we started back here. We started really talking about Q4 of 2014, a developer beta. Now, the thing that makes Magento so darn special is that if you are a merchant with a store, how many of you are merchants in here? Good lot of you. Yeah, I think that was maybe a prerequisite. Then you know your business probably, if you don't know the person next to you who also put up their hand, like your business is different from his or her business. And that's the nature of commerce, right? Commerce is always custom in some regards. Now you can have some systems that can deal with that customization by configuration. Maybe they have a very narrow set of features, and you can sort of configure this and this and this and this, but that's it. Then you have something like Magento, which does a lot via configuration, but then also can require some customization, right? So that brings me back to our developers. We have this worldwide community, truly worldwide community of developers and extension vendors who help make Magento make sense for your business, right? And we started our preview of Magento 2 with them. And then we continued on this timeline. But if this timeline extended, all the way somewhere out, is that the Thames? Okay, all the way somewhere out. Yeah, I like to localize my presentations. All the way out over the Thames, you'd see, okay, the beginning of Magento 1, 2008, right? 2008. Things have changed a lot in both development and commerce, right, in the intervening years. The way you bought stuff online back in 2008 is nothing like today. So we had to make a nice sort of line in the sand, after which we say, hey, that was then, and this is now as well as the future. And that's why we need Magento 2. Many of the things that we worked on for Magento 2, we learned from Magento 1, right? So Magento 1 was absolutely groundbreaking, revolutionary when it came out. I remember the first time I started working on Magento 2 as a developer for one of the gold partners in the States. This was kind of before gold partners were even a thing. I remember opening up the code base and just being completely blown away by its capability from an admin perspective, its presentation for the customers, and then what it looks like underneath. But as time went on, we found some areas where we could improve. Now, those improvements were sort of, those improvements, the need for improvement comes about because not only are the expectations of developers and administrators changing, but also the customers, as I was saying. So if we take a look at some of the, some of the things that go into Magento 2, the first I want to touch on is admin. How many of you have actually either have experience with Magento 1 admin? I'm just curious. Okay. I teach a lot of courses for Magento U, including the developer education and administrator education. And I always love it when I get new people who are new to Magento in the class, and I say, yeah, so this was built by a developer, right? That's Magento 1. Was the and if you've spent time in the Magento 1 admin, it's very functional, but it's also it kind of, I don't know, needs a little more luster, a little better flow. Sometimes it can take several steps to do one thing or another. So in general, and Mitch is going to actually walk you through and show you a lot of these features in depth. So I'm glossing through some of this history here. One of the things that happened since Magento 1 came out, well, we figured out some of the pain points of admins. And so we worked on navigation, we worked on some of product creation flows, etc. But then also this curious thing came around called these big smartphones and iPads, and people actually want to walk around their store and do their administrative work on the iPad. So the Magento 2 admin is actually touch friendly. There's a ton more stuff. Again, Mitch is going to show you that in just a bit. Improved performance. Magento 1, when it came out, was sort of invented with the idea of, hardware is getting better and better. But the expectations of people was like, I'll just get a $5 a month host, or £5, sorry, I'll localize it, £5 a month host, and I'll throw Magento on there. And it didn't work really well. And so this whole industry of Magento specializing hosts, like UKFast, came along and figured out how to really make the most out of the hardware and Magento crossover. And in the case of UKFast, is one of the ones that provides really great service too, and has one of the cooler offices in Manchester. So performance, why does it matter? If you don't know, there are very clear metrics. There's been a lot of studies. The more performant your website is, the better off your customers are, right? They're going to convert more often. You're going to be able to serve more customers at once, especially at peak times. So in general, you get a better use of your hosting money and more money in the door. And then also for Enterprise Edition, what we've done is we've separated between Magento 2 and Magento 1, Enterprise and Community Edition. In Magento 1, the distinction between performance and scalability was a little bit muddy, like whether you would find performance features in CE or EE. In Magento 2, anything related to performance is part of the core, so things like full-page cache. This is, I don't know how technical you want me to get, and I'll be happy to answer questions later. But if you... Basically, the best way to make a web application like Magento or any other application that you'd be serving from a web server more performant is to actually not have that application generate pages on the fly each time the user requests it. So full page cache is a great feature from Magento 1 Enterprise Edition. It's now part of Magento 2 Community Edition, basically the core of the product. From a scalability standpoint, though, we do offer job queues. We offer the ability, which is basically the ability to offload really expensive, sort of processor-intensive transactions till non-peak times. We also offer the ability for database clustering, etc. That's all kind of part of the EE offering. And that's I think it's a compelling way to draw that line and make some value for EE, right? Because it makes sense. If you're operating at scale, you're probably enterprise. Another thing that was really important was we needed to improve the integrations. So we spent a lot of time chatting with our folks, our friends, analysts in the industry, Forrester, Gartner. Gartner did this curious little study. They surveyed a lot of stores, kind of a cross-sectional representation. 14 integrations, the average number of external integrations. That's quite a lot, right? And probably if you've got anything, even small shops actually will use something like dotmailer for handling the sort of the marketing, the automated email aspect of the business. We wanted to make those integrations easier and more bulletproof in Magento 2. Right, so we looked at how Magento 1 was architected. We found some pain points in terms of integrations having to go deep inside to do a lot, basically to do what they're doing. And what that means is that when one integration has to go in here and do something, then another integration has to come over here to do something else, but they kind of end up stepping on each other somewhere inside the code. We did a much better job with Magento 2, or a much more improved job with Magento 2, of actually taking a lot of these core features and really compartmentalizing them, making them a nice black box with a nice, easy interface for external integrations to work with. And then, along with integrations, we have customizations. This is, of course, like what I love because primarily I'm talking with developers. I've got a presentation over in Bruges tonight, actually talking to a whole bunch of developers who are going to beat me up. Because that's what developers do to other developers. But this is where Magento absolutely shines. There's nothing else like it on the planet. The ability to make the system do anything you want, whether it's changing core behavior or it's adding to it. Improved customization means better, faster, cheaper development. The reason I have a star by cheaper is because we've introduced something with Magento 2 that wasn't part of Magento 1. And that is the ability to cover all of your custom code and even integrated code as well as extensions with tests, which is wonderful. It's also kind of a paradigm shift in how development is done in the world of Magento. The reason it wasn't part of Magento 1 was because when Magento 1 was created, no one was writing tests for PHP code. We have a lot of different, we introduced several new ways to actually affect customizations of the application. That's the kind of stuff I talk about with developers. If you have questions on that, I was told not to get too technical, so I'm like restraining myself here. I'm happy to talk about that, afterwards or even as part of the panel. Also, along with one of the aspects of customization is sort of enabling developers. So we've already developed Magento U courses. Magento U is our educational arm. That's kind of how I got my introduction into Magento as an employee. And so Magento U, in fact, is having a class here in London next month, I think, with one of our most outstanding educators, a guy by the name of Vinay Kopp. German, so he's really good and thorough, and if you have developers on staff, man, he'll really put them through the paces. John knows him pretty well, can vouch for him. We also, as far as customization goes, writing a custom extension, writing anything, customizing the code comes with a cost, right? Developers hopefully aren't cheap. They shouldn't be cheap. You get what you pay for, and you pay for what you get in that case. So we offer, we've always had this thing called Magento Connect, right? And this is this extension marketplace of sorts where you can find functionality. Like, I need a Facebook like button on my product page yesterday. I want people to pin my stuff to here and do all these things. Nice to know that you can get a simple integration and it's done just like that. In Magento 2, the marketplace is what we're calling it now. It's no longer Magento Connect, it's the Magento Marketplace. It's curated. We actually are very hands-on with it. We're actually hosting all of the code ourselves. We're kind of a broker. It's basically, it is an app store, right? So we're splitting revenue with the developers. We both have skin in the game, and we're making sure that we're going to actually have fewer extensions. So for any given feature, you're only going to see a couple of extensions in the marketplace, and they will be very high quality and essentially guaranteed. Well, I don't want to say guaranteed. If I weren't on camera, I'd say guaranteed to not break your site. No, we're working really closely hand in hand with our extension vendors, and so like dotmailer, they have an extension that connects Magento to their absolutely stunning backend, right? They did a really good job because everyone gets in there and I think they think it's like Magento somehow, so keep up. Anyway, so we're making sure that those extensions work really well, and we're making sure that your store will benefit from what you buy out of the marketplace. That marketplace is actually launching this month, I think, or no, I'm sorry, not this month, this quarter. And we have a number of extensions that will be available at launch. I think the current count is, it's much more than it was back in November. It's like 170 or something. Not entirely sure I'm supposed to say that, but that's why they hired me, right, to come out here and sort of let things out. So improved upgrades. This is another thing. If you've been through, how many of you have been through a Magento upgrade for Magento 1? How many enjoyed that process? It's not a great story. It's another reason they have me out here is they want me, I take the pain, right? It's not, and trust me, I've been through it. Blue Acorn, where I used to work, our bread and butter was taking over broken sites, right? And we would have to fix their core and get them upgraded. So I've been through a lot of upgrades. I know the pain. Magento 2 upgrades are a much, much, much better story. For a couple reasons. One, again, the test coverage really makes things shine. In terms of making sure, like, hey, if we execute this code, if we put this code in place, will things break? Then we have our quarterly feature releases. This is the real story about Magento 2 and upgrades. Once we can assure you that your upgrades are going to go smoothly. Right? Again, you shouldn't have any code in your system that breaks things, and you know that by the tests. And then when it comes time to upgrade, you take the new core code and put it in place and run the tests. I mean, you don't, as a merchant or as like an administrator, you don't run the tests. Your developers do that. Then you know things are okay. That means you benefit from new features every 3 months or so, right? So every quarter. We have these product releases. So we're actually going to put out new features that you'll get just by being on the platform. And that's, there'll be features for CE, there will be new features for EE as well. And in between that, we will have constant platform updates. For example, we just had our 2.0.0 release, and then a 2.0.1 release, which gave us the ability to connect with PHP 7. And to work with PHP 7 out of the box. And now we're getting ready to release a patch for 2.0.2. So we're not just limiting releases to every quarter. We do have these kind of interstitial releases that keep things operating smoothly. And I just have to harp on testing being everything. So again, if you have developers on staff or if you're working with a company that has developers, ask them about testing. It's important. It's commerce. It's not like defibrillator software important, but it's important probably to all of you. I know it's important to merchants because I've broken merchant sites before with releases, and it's really interesting how quickly you can hear from somebody. And then I think this is my last sort of enumerated slide. Improve resources. We started a Magento 2 trained agency program, so you can actually look for Magento 2 trained agency badges. And if you're working with a developer and they're not Magento 2 trained, you might inquire about that so that would encourage them to become Magento 2 trained. It's a simple program to get involved with. It's not a moneymaker for us. It's actually our investment in the ecosystem. As I mentioned, Magento U classes are available now. We have documentation, which is fantastic because there was none for Magento 1. This was a real problem as a developer trying to figure things out. I spun my wheels for a couple months on my first site. We have tech writers on staff. We also allow the community to contribute to that documentation as well. It's been a very good interaction with the community. Also, we do have currently Magento certified developer program as well as solution specialists and front-end developers. Once we have a body of Magento 2 work out there and we can make a meaningful certification, we will create Magento 2 certifications as well. And I was on the certification board for Magento 1. I suspect I will be for Magento 2. And our certification is really thorough. I missed one of my own questions when I took the test. So that's how thorough it is, I guess. And then our biggest resource, I have to stress, is the community. If you're not familiar with the Magento community, well, take a look around. This is actually part of it. The merchant ecosystem, the developer ecosystem, the ecosystem of all of our partners, official and even not official, just the people that help come together and contribute to the body of work, the body of knowledge. That's what makes a difference. You heard John mention Mitch and the Magento London meetup. I literally go to 30 sort of Magento kind of branded events around the world. I'm going to Serbia this year. And we don't do that. That's all the community. And that's the reason Magento succeeds. So that is our primary resource, I would say. There was a question that was fired in preparation for this. And so what does the community think? Well, since GA, now this is middle of November, 3,000 downloads from a private repository of Enterprise Edition. Community Edition, already 120,000 downloads. The uptake has been really, really quick. The developers that I speak with, they're pretty excited about it. There are rough edges. I'm not from marketing, I'm not from sales. So I'm happy to tell you that yes, there are some rough edges. But if you are interested in being on Magento, you should plan on being on Magento 2, and you should start basically now. And finally, this was great. I was actually another community organized thing that happened. What, 3, 4, 5 days ago? I was in the Netherlands. One of the their hosting company for the Netherlands, the market in the Netherlands. Get up on stage, and he goes through this whole presentation about Magento 2. I couldn't get most of it because it's in Dutch, and Dutch is only understandable if you speak English, German, and drink beer, or are Dutch, sorry, and Dutch too. But I loved it because Magento 2 is awesome. Like to actually, to know that we've got a couple hundred people, developers and product people in Ukraine and in the States, and they work really, really hard. They pour their soul into the product, for the developers and then the arbiters in our ecosystem to get their hands on it and just say, hey, we're finding this out. You need to do this. You need to do this. We don't like this. We're going to change this. But fundamentally, the takeaway is Magento 2 is awesome. That means a lot. And I've got the kind of community that wouldn't let me off the hook. They're not being nice to me. They're telling me they like what they see. So, by the way, if you want to listen to our honchos, the head honchos, our head of product, Paul Boisvert, who else? I think Robert Johnson from Services. I think he's from Services. Anyway, a few of our Magento, our internal luminaries. There's actually a webinar today that's going to happen. It's at, I think, 3 p.m. London time. Time zones are a little bit tough for me right now. bit.ly/M2London. That's the link. You can go ahead and register and be ready to watch that at 3 p.m. today. I recommend it. It's a great preview of Enterprise Edition, of EE 2.0. It's got roadmap information and also some discussions about just general stats regarding Magento 2. And then, as I mentioned, there's Magento 2 training, some pricing. Now, we've got special pricing right now because we speak merchantese too. We know we got to build up demand and sort of restrict supply. And so February 29th, it goes away. We get one extra day this year because it's leap year. Fundamentals of Magento 2 development. There's an online portion and then an in-class portion. Core principles for theming. This is if you know anyone who's into, who actually has to make the site look like you want it to look. That's the course for them. And managing your Magento 2 store. That's the admin course. So that's what we have on the docket right now. More training on the way in the works. So your takeaway, by the way, is that we are Magento. It's 500 people, not part of this massive company anymore. Every one of us cares about you and your store. We have to partner with you. You have to partner with us. We can make the best product in the world, but without great merchants, without a great ecosystem of companies like UKFast, Space 48, dotmailer, none of this would matter. So we all have to work together to do this, and believe me, we know that. So that's my contact info again, and I suppose we'll take questions at the panel a little bit later on. Thank you very much.